Good afternoon. I am calling to order our regularly scheduled meeting of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. My name is Elizabeth Glidden. I'm the chair of this committee, and I'm joined today by council members Warsami, Fry, and Andrew Johnson, and we are a quorum of the committee. We have a short agenda today, so that will mostly be taken up with getting a verbal report. And I have one amendment that I wanted to make to the agenda. I've passed out for everyone a motion that would be making some language adjustments to our 2016 legislative policies regarding fostering equity in Minneapolis. And I'd like to move to add that as item number 2 and then put our federal, state, and local legislative updates as item number 3. So I'll go ahead and move that change to the agenda. All in approval, please say aye. 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 Opposed? And that item is approved. So we will turn to our updates to our 2016 policy positions. And for item number 1, I'm going to ask Ms. Bergman just to give us an overview of kind of what's the intent with these kind of bucket of changes, slight language changes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Sasha Bergman with the Intergovernmental Relations Department. We are bringing forward a few new proposed changes to our legislative agenda and policy positions. As you know, we had just recently updated our policy positions through the last cycle, but we have a couple more recommendations at this time. I think you should have a list of the major changes. There are 9 of them. So the first item would be a change to the actual legislative agenda, kind of the short list of our policy priorities, to add a section on municipal governance. And it would be adding a statement of support for efforts to maintain or enhance local governance and oppose efforts by the legislature to interfere in local government decision-making authority. And this is really, there's a number of items moving at the legislature this year, and there have been in past years, to interfere with local government power. And this statement, I think, just adds to the importance of maintaining local control. The League of Minnesota Cities and Metro Cities both have a number of different policies on local control interspersed throughout their legislative priorities and policy positions. And so we thought it would be a good time to update ours. In correspondence with that, in the 2016 policy positions, the longer document of items, we proposed some changes to the municipal governance section to update the introductory paragraph to the municipal governance section, reflecting the local control issue and making sure that that we are supportive of local control and opposing efforts to interfere with local governments at the legislative level. We are also, similar to the item that we are adding to the legislative agenda, we are adding a similar statement to our policy positions just to make it consistent. Item number 4 is an update to the public safety policies and coordination efforts section to support the core state government function of operating state correctional facilities and oppose efforts to privatize all or portions of those facilities. Number 5 is on page 6 regarding strengthening the criminal code. We are adding a supportive statement or suggesting a supportive statement for the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission recommendations. On page 9, item number 6, page 9 in the youth violence prevention section, we wanted to delete the statement there, but then add it to the jobs and workforce development section, which is the next item. So adding the statement of support for state and federal workforce funding and policies to support employing at-risk youth and youth reentering the community from the criminal justice system. This is just kind of reordering the priorities there. It's really a statement in support of making sure that youth have access to employment opportunities and less kind of about the youth violence prevention section. And then item number 8 is to add a couple of words to the existing policy that we have stating support for expanding access to employee benefits, including paid leave and earned safe and sick time, to specify that it's paid family and medical leave. There are efforts at the Capitol right now moving forward on paid family and medical leave, and we can talk about that in the update on the state legislative session in a few minutes. But we thought we'd be more specific on that item. And then item number 9 would just be to allow us to make any formatting changes that are necessary with all of the different changes that have been made. And we're all happy to stand for questions on this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you for running through that list of changes, some of which were to clarify what really has been some longstanding city positions that align with the League of Minnesota Cities and Metro Cities regarding state interference and local control issues, and there's a variety of items that would touch on that. Some of these are some new items that are coming up at the legislature that align with things that we have done as government or would like to do, such as the city's work to extend family leave to our own employees at the city of Minneapolis. So any questions from committee members? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to go ahead and move approval of this item. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And those items are approved. Next, and I think I probably just should have made this as a motion to amend this longer list of amendments, but and I'm pulling a little piece of paper here. I have passed down in front of you a motion by myself to amend the 2016 legislative policies. This came about because there are a couple of bills in the House and in the Senate that would make changes to the Minnesota Human Rights Act, specifically relating to public accommodations. The bills would propose to essentially redefine what it means to be able to have access to restroom facilities based on how they redefine sex and sexual orientation. And this has been popularly talked about in the news as an effort that is intended to affect transgender community members. So I just want to make sure I say that at the City of Minneapolis, we have a transgender issues work group that has been formally established. We are working, I think, in a very different direction than this, which is to further offer more protections to all of our community members and ensure that we are consistently doing that. The other thing I'll just say that is a concern about these types of amendments to the Minnesota Human Rights Act is what effect there may be on our own civil right ordinance. And again, this is another way of there being a potential state interference and local control type issue. So I'm sure that staff would be willing to answer any questions that committee members would have, but I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve this addition to or amendment to the 2016 legislative policies. Any questions or comments by committee members? I'm not seeing any, so all in approval, please say aye. 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 Opposed? And that item is approved. And finally, we will have some updates from staff on what is happening primarily since we are in the middle of the session. Ms. Lesh.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Good afternoon, Melissa Lesh with the City of Minneapolis' Government Relations Department. I'm going to start with an update on some of the equity work that we know is going to be moving through this session. Primarily, the city has been working a lot with Senator Dietzig. We thank her for her efforts on the youth employment funding. The city is, along with the City of St. Paul and other recipients around the state, the recipient of support from the state of Minnesota for our Step Up program, which is our summer youth employment program. And historically, that has been a competitive grant that the city has applied for and used that funding to support wages for youth ages 14 up to 24, actually. And so we are working with Senator Dietzig to look at how that program is currently structured and funded. We'll be seeking additional resources for that this year. The governor specifically called out the Youth at Work competitive grant program, which is what helps to fund Step Up, in his equity proposal. In the last budget cycle, Step Up was funded at about $3.2 million for the biennium. The governor has proposed $8 million in a one-time shot in the arm to this program. So we're really happy to see that. We'll be working with DEED as we move forward. No actual legislative language has been released yet, so we will be working with them to see how they describe the program and statute and everything, but we're very happy to see that. And then actually, you could hand me such a hurry today. I'm going to give you my update on my phone. So the governor's package is $100 million looking at reducing racial and economic disparities in the state. $33 million of that is yet to be defined. The governor has really left that to the legislature to debate and discuss and address, different areas of the state budget as they see fit. So that's really an undefined area right now. But a couple of things that the governor did call out in his budget I wanted to mention. One is a new program, indeed, called the Emerging Entrepreneur Fund. And that's a recommendation of $6 million in one-time money. That's $5 million for a loan program and $1 million for technical assistance. And that would be distributed to nonprofit organizations throughout the state. And that is a new program. It's the first of its kind that would be a statewide lending and technical assistance program to serve businesses owned by people of color, women, veterans, and people with disabilities. This approach would consolidate 3 existing deed programs into one streamlined program. So interested organizations could just submit one application and not have to apply to 3 separate deed programs. So a wise approach, we think. I mentioned the Youth at Work program. And then finally, Pathways to Prosperity. The governor's recommending $4.1 million, also in one-time money. And you're going to see a lot of these are going to be one-time money just with the supplemental budget. That's what the approach is going to be. It's hard to get it in the base with one-time money. Pathways to Prosperity will create partnerships between adult basic education providers, community-based nonprofits, workforce development providers, higher education institutions, and employers. Again, this will be one application then to streamline all of those different providers. Additional funding would serve 2,000 adults with barriers to employment. It would empower Minnesotans with barriers to employment, such as being low income, not having a high school diploma, lacking child care, lacking transportation, lacking adequate and affordable housing, and things of those nature. And then these would be grants to nonprofit and community-based organizations. So we're really excited to be seeing this moving forward, and we think this will be a great benefit to a lot of the organizations that the city partners with here in Minneapolis. Moving on then to transportation, not much to report quite yet. We will probably have something to report to you, I'm guessing, mid to late May. But this is going to be one of the linchpins of the legislative session. As we've mentioned to you before, the 3 really large areas that are really left open from last year are a tax bill that is still sitting open, a transportation bill, that only a small lights-on bill was passed last year, so a large comprehensive transportation package, and the bonding bill. And you really can't have one without the other. So we'll be watching the progress and the fits and starts of each one of those 3. But as of right now, no real updates on transportation. We know that the 2 chairs, Senator Dibble and Representative Kelly, are talking, and they've got some agreement on several items. But we'll just continue to watch. The conference committee met and did a walkthrough of the bill, but no action's been taken so far. Regarding the bonding bill, last week we had Mayor Hodges up to the Capitol. The House Capital Investment Committee invited the city of St. Paul, and some cities from greater Minnesota to come and present about our bonding priorities. So the mayor came and gave a presentation, and then we also had staff there who answered some technical questions. Nothing really significant to report. We appreciate the committee's time and their questions and interest. We've had a series of meetings with legislators over the course of the last couple of weeks, also answering more detailed questions about our bonding priorities. And then finally, public safety. As Ms. Bergman mentioned in the updates to the legislative agenda and policy positions, we did add 2 statements to the public safety section, one regarding the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission and their recommendations. Just earlier last week, the House Public Safety, Finance, and Policy Committee did vote on a party line vote to refuse to adopt the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission recommendations. It's not clear what position the Senate is going to take on that, so we'll continue to watch that moving forward. And then also, as we mentioned, the discussion around private prisons. There was a vote earlier this week, again, a party line vote in the House Public Safety Committee to support the leasing of bed space at the private prison in Appleton. The governor came out with a very strong statement, very clearly opposing such an action, as well did his commissioners testify at the hearing to that effect. So with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it over to, I think, Ms. Bergman, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Again, Sasha Bergman from the IGR department. I wanted to touch base briefly on the issue of taxes. Not much has happened, like transportation, not much has happened yet in the area of taxes at the legislature in terms of committee hearings. Last week, the governor did propose an increase of $21.5 million total in local government aid, a one-time increase for payable in 2016. I believe that would result in just a little under $3 million for the city of Minneapolis, according to the LGA runs produced by House Research. That is in contrast to the House bill from last year in the tax committee, which is still on the table for discussion in conference committee to cut local government aid just to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Duluth. The cut to Minneapolis alone would be $34.4 million in 2016 proposed in that bill. And then the Senate position in the tax conference committee is for an increase in total local government aid appropriation of $21.5 million in 2016 and $45 million in 2017 and ongoing, and that would get the LGA formula funding back to the pre-2003 levels before several years of cuts. Wanted to touch briefly on the paid family medical leave bill, which I mentioned earlier. This is a bill authored by Senator Sieben, and she actually was the author of the bill last year. What ended up happening through the committee hearing process was a study on how to approach a paid family medical leave system in Minnesota, funding for a study, and that was conducted by the University of Minnesota. I believe it was completed in either January or February of this year, and her bill is modeled after that. What the bill would do is really create a mechanism similar to the unemployment insurance fund. It would be funded with contributions from employees and employers as well. And if, it would, a 7-day event would trigger it, and the events it's intended to support are for longer term illnesses, pregnancy, things of that nature, but not shorter term illnesses like paid sick time would address. This bill has made it through two committees so far, and I don't think it's been scheduled in the next committee it's been referred to, and it has not yet moved in the House. Just a couple of public health items I wanted to update committee members on. The bill that the city has been working in partnership with the American Lung Association, the Local Public Health Association, and a number of other organizations over the last couple of years is a bill regarding asthma to help children with poorly controlled asthma bring services that would help them, like in-home assessments and asthma education and coverage for allergen-reducing products under medical assistance. We were very pleased to see the governor include this recommendation in his budget released last week, and the bill was heard in the Senate earlier this week. It's authored by Senator Hoffman, and we are hoping to get a hearing in the House, and ultimately would love to see that pass in one of the Omnibus Health and Human Services bills. And then also an item that in our health department, I should say, has been very involved in that effort as well, with all the stakeholders at the table, as well as with another effort, the Good Food Access Fund, which is something really being led by the American Heart Association, but has a number of stakeholders at the table, including the city and our sustainability office, as well as our health department. And that would really help to provide a new funding source from the Department of Agriculture to provide loans, technical assistance, and things of that nature to enhance grocery stores and opportunities for folks to access healthy foods where there are, food deserts and areas where there's not very good access to healthy foods. And then finally, I wanted to mention that the governor recommended a significant investment in home visiting in his budget last week, which is a big priority of our health department and on our policy positions, and also is part of the mayor's Cradle to K cabinet recommendations. And so we were very pleased to see that in the governor's recommendations. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm not seeing any, so
I'll turn it over to Mr. Ranieri.
Okay, Mr. Ranieri.
Madam Chair, members, I want to cover about 5 different topics. One is elections. The elections committees in both bodies have been pretty active, and it looks like there might be an omnibus election bill. We rarely use omnibus for non-appropriations, but there could be one this year. They've done it in the past. Some of the items they're talking about is a presidential primary for 2020. It would be in March. There's lots of things, the committees are working on that now. The Senate, I think, has moved it out of their subcommittee and on to the Rules Committee. And this morning it was in Government Operations in the House. It looks like that bill could be on the floor either separately or as part of an omnibus bill. The other one is the June primary. There also is some discussion in both bodies, and I think hearing in the House about a primary in June, and that would be for 2018, I think if I'm correct, and it would be statewide. And also the other one is a very interesting bill. It's in the Senate, and in an attempt to try and keep the lines down on election day, there is a proposal that would say if you wanted to vote absentee the last 7 days and come to a polling place, you can opt to take a regular ballot, fill out all the forms, and then submit your ballot into the ballot counter, and there wouldn't be the envelope process and storing them for 7 days, storing them to election day and opening them. It would hopefully expedite the process. It would probably save some money, and it would hopefully facilitate less lines on election day because people can come in and do it in the last 7 days. That looks like, and it was even mentioned in the Senate committee, that it looks like early voting. However, it was called optional voting. It would be an optional way to do the absentee, and the number of absentees in the last general election were fairly high, particularly in our county and in our city and throughout the state. So, Madam Chair, I'll stop and try and answer any questions if there are on the election issues, and then if not, I'll move on. Okay. We have we don't have an official position, but again, another concern about interfering in local decision making is a bill that Representative Nash has that's basically trying to put some transparency or some public input into the interim ordinance issue. Interim ordinances, as you are aware, are where a city can have a moratorium on some sort of development. We have done a few over the last 10 or 12 years. There's been many in the suburbs. Right now, there is really no notice. The legislature suggesting his bill originally said 30. However, in working closely with the League of Cities and others, it was today eliminated down to 10 days. There was speaking for many of the development community. Speaking against and raising for some concerns was the League. There will be some more discussions going on in the House. The bill should be heard in the Senate next week. It has bipartisan support. It has authors on both sides of the aisle in both the House and the Senate. Another bill dealing with the development and housing is we supported a legislation that would generate more of a balance between rental housing and ownership housing. And it's commonly known as the condo bill. It hasn't been dropped, but I found out today it was introduced today into the House and the Senate. I have not gone through the contents of the bill, and we'll get that to you, but there's possibility of a hearing next week in the House. But the bill, I'm not sure what the contents are. On body cams, the body cam legislation in the House, there has been no bill introduced other than what was introduced last year. No hearings have been scheduled, and it is possible that there could be something next week, but the deadline is also next week. So it's looking a little bit grimmer for a body cam bill. I think the issue is how much should the legislature tell police departments how to implement body cams in terms of body cam policies versus the classification of the data generated by. And the last item, Madam Chair, is the Met Council. There have been some hearings over in the House, particularly on governance, but nothing in the Senate yet. And I'll stop for any questions.
All right.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Madam Chair, one thing I want to add is way back in January, there was a public hearing on the Community Action Agency. Nothing has happened yet because we were waiting for the administrative law judge to get back to us. So it's still in abeyance.
Okay, so essentially the process is that we get an order back from the administrative law judge, and hopefully that will be one finding that we can proceed.
Right.
And then is that our last piece of process?
Madam Chair, that is our last piece of the process.
Okay, all right.
And I don't know if the judges have a timeline or not, but I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all the updates. We know that our staff is working extremely hard and really unusual, very compressed session. I think sometimes it's a little bit hard here. I know that you are calling on us individually to come and assist with conversations with legislators on our priorities or on issues that come up, and I just encourage you to continue to do that. I know that council members are very willing to come and lend their assistance where that makes sense. because I think, even from the news, we know that, the ability to negotiate to getting bills on big items may be difficult. I think, that's maybe a little bit of the lack of questions that you're seeing here as we're all just awaiting how does the big picture move forward. So, but thank you so much for your work. And with that, I think we've taken all the actions that we need to take, and we are done with our business for today. So we are adjourned. Thank you very much.